Welcome back, everybody, and we're here to film the 30th episode of the Play Action Pod. My name is Brennan. Beside me is Brock, and before we jump into our episode today, serious topic. There's some news that came out with Mike Leach, and sounds like he's suffering a heart attack.
Yeah,
so he suffered a heart attack.
It sounds like this morning. As we were recording this, so this would be Sunday morning. And it sounds like he was, flown to the hospital and just is in critical condition right now. So pretty sad story coming out of Mississippi State. So, our prayers, go up to Mike Leach for sure.
Yeah, and his family. I mean, our prayers and condolences from the Play Action Pod crew. We, does he have children? He has children, right?
I'd assume so, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's crazy. It came out of nowhere. I know that he's playing in a bowl game pretty soon, which, I mean, it doesn't matter. Right now, it's pretty serious situation. So, I mean, we just thought we would, make everyone aware of the situation and, show that we really do care about, Mike Leach and his situation. But I'm sure that there will be more information by the time that this is released, because I think this will be released in a couple days, probably Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday morning. So I'm sure that there will be more information by then. But, we hope that he's okay by then and, in better condition. But anyways, jumping into today's episode, what's on the agenda for today? What are we going to talk about?
I think we got to talk about Mr. Heisman.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
We called it.
We did call it.
I feel like it was pretty easy though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were pretty confident that, Caleb Williams is going to be the one to win the Heisman. And he did. So I did you watch the show?
A little bit. I watched like pieces of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get too much of it in. But
yeah, it was kind of awkward.
I saw some of his speech.
Yeah.
So
it's just something about that room. It just felt very awkward.
Well, did you see the CJ Stroud?
Yeah.
He kind of gave handshakes the first two and then got to Desmond Howard and then just kept going.
Yeah. So, I don't know, because I felt like the line kind of curved.
Yeah.
Where he was meeting Desmond and then he just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
So I think, the internet kind of freaked out. They're like, oh my gosh, they got beef.
Yeah. Any chance the internet can take something completely out of proportion, they're going to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that reaction was not out of character for the internet. But, besides that, Caleb's speech, I thought was pretty good. Yep. He just he shouted out to, I think it was all the guys on the ballot there, obviously, for picking him. And then, the finalists as well in Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett, and CJ Stroud. And he made a funny comment about how, these guys get to play in the college football playoff and he doesn't. And then Stetson was like, because it's like, I wonder what those guys would rather have,
Yeah.
Is to play on January, or I guess it would be to play in the playoff or to, be hoisting that Heisman trophy.
The importance of the Heisman shouldn't be understated, but I think I'd rather be playing, for a national championship.
Yeah.
Because it's like, as a Heisman, like individually you go down, in the history books, but if your team wins a national championship, I think it just means so much more. And you have a lot of good memories with a lot of good dudes. So yeah. I would rather win a national championship personally, but that's not to take away the importance of the Heisman,
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
To show that, Caleb Williams is the best player in college football this year. I think that means a lot too. And I don't know, I could go either way with those, but I think I'd rather have a national championship personally.
So I think there was the standings or the runner-up. Who was the runner-up? I think it was
Max, I think.
It was Max, okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I would have thought. Honestly, just how things have played out as far as the teams. Ohio State, they snuck in. But, I think that Stroud, he would have won it if his performance against Michigan was better.
Yeah.
I really think it came down to that.
I think if he goes for 5 touchdowns, maybe 300 yards, and if they do lose, maybe lose a close one.
Yeah.
I think he probably collects that award, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think Stetson Bennett should have been there? You think it should have been like Bijan Robinson? Or I saw a lot of, people being like, Bijan got robbed. He should have been there.
Yeah, I think Bijan had a case, but I think the one that truly should feel robbed is Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
I think, I can't remember who it was. I think Stetson Bennett was asked about Hendon Hooker not being there. And I think Stetson said, like, Hendon Hooker, single-handedly kind of turned a program around.
He really did, yeah. And a lot of respect for him saying that.
I think that's completely true. And another conversation I've seen is, if you switch Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker, on teams, like, who's doing better on the respective team. It's like you put Hendon in Georgia, Stetson on Tennessee, who's doing better?
Yeah, because I think the talent surrounding Stetson is better than the talent surrounding, Hendon Hooker over at Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I definitely think his injury probably played a role.
Yeah, definitely.
Which sucks. I mean, it should not take away the performance and what he's done all season before the injury. So I feel like, he kind of got robbed there. I totally agree.
I just think, like, if you think about the way that Hendon went out, he tore his ACL in a blowout loss to South Carolina. That it probably just left a sour taste in a lot of people's votes. And, that's kind of just how they voted from there.
Yeah, which is so unfortunate.
It really is, yeah.
Dude, I think he was kind of the front runner the entire year, I feel like.
I think so too, yeah.
And then, he went down with the injury. They lose to South Carolina. Things just go south. But, you kind of got to credit him for the season he's had prior to the injury, like we mentioned.
Definitely, yeah.
So, and I think Hendon Hooker is 100% better than Stetson Bennett.
I think so
personally.
Too, yeah.
And I know that we got a lot of clips of us, just being Stetson haters. We've seen that on the socials. Everyone's like, oh, clearly someone hates Stetson Bennett. But, that's just how we feel.
And I don't even think it's disrespect towards Stetson Bennett. He has a role on his Georgia team and he fulfills that role.
It's to not lose football games.
Exactly. So it's
he does it. He does it great.
Yeah,
it's no discredit. He gets the job done.
Like, if you put 3 quarterbacks in front of me and it's, Hendon Hooker, maybe like, I don't know, Bryce Young or Stetson Bennett to keep it SEC. I don't think anyone's picking Stetson Bennett. Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So it's like, they can view it as disrespect. I view it as, he has a job that he fulfills on his Georgia team. He does it well, and that's why Georgia is successful.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about, the better quarterback or the best quarterback, he just shouldn't be in that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. We there's the clip of us talking about how, he just throws quick slants to 6'7" receivers. And yeah, I mean, you could classify it as hate, but it's just how we feel, and we're just gonna say it how it is. But should we do a little playoff talk though? Just before anything, I know that today's episode is mainly going to be about, our best bowl games that aren't New Year's 6 bowl games that will be coming up in the next few weeks. But I don't know. I've been seeing a lot. I saw Stephen A. Smith. He was like, dude, Alabama should be in it. They should have been in it. And he's been going off, just saying, Bama's one of the top 4 teams, which, I mean, you could make the case for, but, like we mentioned before, that's just not how it works, because they just didn't get it done this year.
Well, yeah, and it's like, on paper, I think this is something we didn't emphasize when we talked about Alabama. On paper, Alabama is one of the best 4 teams in the country. And I don't think anyone can really disagree with that. But, the game isn't played on paper. The game's played on the field. And there are 2 opportunities that they had a chance to, really solidify themselves in the playoff. They didn't take advantage.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they're any less talented than, what we think they are? No, I don't think so. I think on the day, I would probably pick Alabama in most matchups, like we've said before. But, there are 2 opportunities that they really needed to take advantage of. They didn't. And that's kind of the nature of, the playoff is you have teams like Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, who, for the most part, besides, TCU and Ohio State losing games late in the year, they took care of their opportunities. And I think, that's why they're in the playoff, and that's why Alabama's not.
And think about it. If the 12-team playoff was implemented this year, Alabama would be, maybe top 2 favorites to win the entire thing.
Exactly.
So, I mean, with that new implementation, it doesn't just favor, teams that will most likely never make a 4th-team playoff. It favors teams like Alabama, who have the chance to win it every year, have the talent to win it every year, but, make a few mistakes, lose a couple games in the regular season, and still have a shot to be able to, win it all. So I think that, the 12-team playoff is needed. I wish we were getting it this year, but obviously we're not. But, that's just, something to think about.
Yeah. And, the Alabama argument, like I get it. I understand. I see where Alabama fans and Nick Saban are coming from. But, it's like you guys are given the benefit of the doubt 9 times out of 10, I would say, So you guys are usually in a position to, get yourself into the playoff, even with like hiccups. I know there was a year that it was very controversial that Alabama got in.
Yeah.
And then what do? They ended up winning the whole thing. So it's like, could that happen this year if Alabama was in? Of course it could happen. But it's like the game's not played on paper. Alabama on paper is one of the best 4 teams. On the field, they're probably not.
Yeah. And it's so easy to go into this playoff saying that, Georgia is the clear favorite, which I would say that they have the best chance to win it. But I feel like anyone could win it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put my money on anyone right now until, there's further news about maybe some injuries within Ohio State or something. But I just feel like Ohio State has the best chance to knock off Georgia. And I feel like that's going to be the harder test for Georgia is going to be that first round.
Yeah, and I know we had some comments about, us disrespecting Georgia by saying that. And I don't think it's disrespect. Look at it from Ohio State's standpoint. They're coming off a brutal loss to their arch rival, someone they can't stand. They hate more than anything. And then they're sitting on the couch, championship Saturday, or I guess technically championship Friday for them. And they're watching that Utah USC game, just praying for a chance. Now that they get their chance, the whole nation is saying they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to be there. They're not one of the top 4 teams. They're hearing all that noise.
Oh yeah,
like they know where they stand in the the nation's eye. So they're going to be absolutely fired up to get that opportunity to take down what is probably the favorite.
Yeah,
to win the whole thing. So that's why it's a matchup for me. Like I said, back to that on paper stuff. On paper, Georgia's a better football team than Ohio State. You really can't argue that. They just are. So that's what makes this game interesting is Georgia should win, but Ohio State is playing for a lot more, I think.
Yeah.
They're playing for respect.
And I think they have the offense to keep up with Georgia. Georgia's not really known for their explosive offense. I think that on any given day, CJ Stroud could go off, hang 40 or 50 points on a team, even on Georgia, who's known to have a good defense. I think that on a good day, he could go out there and just put up crazy amounts of points, and it would just be hard to, hang with that, that Buckeye squad. So, I think that they have the best shot to upset. And, we'll talk about, all the playoff later, but that's kind of just what we're thinking, for the moment, because when are the playoff games?
Oh, I think they're the 29th. I want to
29th. Yeah. I want to say it's like a couple days before.
A couple days before New Year's.
Yeah, New Year's. So, we came up with a list with our best bowl matchups besides the New Year's 6 bowl games. We'll cover the New Year's 6 bowl games later because they will be played on January 2nd. I believe all of them will be. Or most
majority, yeah. There is some that are not on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day.
Yeah, but games excluding the New Year's 6 bowl games. One being Oregon versus North Carolina. We got the Holiday Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Great quarterback matchup.
Fantastic.
Bo Nix has had a phenomenal season along with Drake May, who, was probably on the waiting list for that Heisman finalist, but same type of deal. The team didn't really perform towards the end of the season, and so it might be one of the reasons why he was excluded. But regardless, great quarterback matchup.
Fantastic. And I think that's what makes this game so intriguing to me as a viewer. And I probably will tune into this game and be like excited to watch it because, Bo Nix, the last probably couple weeks, we've been hearing about that injury with his ankle, I believe. So he's going to have, 4 weeks to rest up. He's had about a month actually to rest up and be ready for that game. So, we're going to get a healthy Bo Nix. We're going to get a healthy Drake May. And they're just 2 fantastic quarterbacks that are going to be going at it.
And 2 teams that are probably very upset with the way that the end of their season panned out. Both excluded from their conference I guess North Carolina made a conference championship, lost their game. Oregon, lost their season finale to Oregon State. Both teams are just angry and probably want to just go out and just win this football game.
Yeah, and I think what makes this game even better is, the rumors are that Bo Nix is coming back to Oregon next year. So both these teams are, trying to build momentum going into the next season.
Yeah.
Obviously Drake May's coming back to North Carolina. So you're going to have two quarterbacks that are going to want to finish this season on a positive mark, going into, the offseason to kind of build momentum, going into next year. So I think both teams are going to want to win this game, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see how it turns out.
And they could both be potential contenders for the playoff next year.
Definitely.
I think that, with those quarterbacks coming back, anything could happen in this day and age. So I believe that, either of these teams could, get some sunshine with the playoff in the next year. But, good game to look out for. Next one, Texas versus Washington. Same type of deal. We get a great quarterback matchup. Is Quinn Ewers going to be playing?
Yes, I think
he will be. So, Quinn Ewers, who's had, an iffy season just because of some injuries here and there, versus Michael Penix Jr., who's had ridiculous statistic year as far as passing yards and passing touchdowns. So, another great matchup across, two different Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, and, same kind of deal as the Oregon-North Carolina game is, Quinn Ewers is going to be back next year, and Michael Penix is going to be back next year. So, both of these teams, with a good offseason, they could be, fighting for their conference or maybe fighting for a playoff spot. So, I think this is going to be another game that both these teams are going to want to win. They're going to want to show out and, try to build some momentum going into the next season. Yeah,
and even be potential Heisman candidates.
Yeah.
I know that you've said before. Michael Penix, he's got the numbers to be a Heisman candidate. I just think that your team has to be contending for a playoff, at least a conference championship, to be, included in the race. So, Michael Penix, he has the stats to do it. Maybe he'll repeat that next year, and maybe Washington will be a team that makes the conference championship and then maybe a playoff team as well. So, both teams are looking to get some momentum. LSU versus Purdue.
Yeah, this is another interesting one for me because, we've talked about Purdue kind of backdooring their way into the Big Ten championship game. They obviously won their division, but it is a weaker division. And I don't know. I think Purdue is an interesting team because I think on their day, I think the Spoilermakers can.
The Spoilermakers.
I think they can cause some trouble.
Yeah, they really could.
But I think the more intriguing side of this matchup is LSU. Because I think if I had to pick right now, I think LSU would be potentially one of my early playoff favorites. I think because they just announced that Keyshawn Boutte is coming back for next season. Jaden Daniels is going to be there. Brian Kelly has put together some good recruiting classes, since he's been at LSU. So I think they could be definitely a dark horse, playoff team next year and maybe get a couple guys in the transfer portal, and you never know. So I think LSU is going to be very interesting to me to see how they play in this bowl game to, hopefully build, like I said, that momentum going into the next season.
It's crazy how competitive the SEC is getting.
It really
next year they're adding Texas and Oklahoma. That's next year, right?
No, I think they got a couple years.
Oh, they got a couple years.
2020.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because there's a couple years where the Big 12 is going to be bigger.
Yeah, it's going to be 14.
14 starting next year.
Yeah.
Because BYU is going in and Cincinnati,
and then I think UCF and Houston as well.
UCF and Houston. So, yeah, it's going to be a crowded party.
I think all.
But then, with the departure of Oklahoma and Texas loading into the SEC, it's going to be very competitive. Now the LSU, they're making the SEC championship first year with Brian Kelly. They've proven to be a real threat for Nick Saban and his dynasty over there. Because, the way that they're reloading, looking at, fresh new squad or same squad next year. And, who knows what happens with Alabama. Bryce Young will be, he'll be hitting the draft. So, having a first year quarterback in there will definitely be, a challenge for Alabama. And I could see LSU potentially winning that West Division and facing, I guess, maybe Georgia. Whoever's on the other side is Georgia.
Probably Georgia.
Yeah, probably Georgia on the other side for the SEC championship. So LSU reloading. But the last one that we want to mention is Notre Dame versus South Carolina, which this is a matchup of teams that spoiled Clemson's season. I guess Notre Dame beating them first, and then South Carolina, going in there to their place and getting it done as well. Both teams kind of started off, a little rocky at the beginning of the season. Definitely Notre Dame, who lost to Marshall and Stanford, who, we never let them live that down.
Yep.
We'll probably be talking about it next year as well. And then, South Carolina, Spencer Rattler just finally showed up for the last 3 games of the season. He's been balling out as well. So both teams with a lot of momentum and, looking to get this bowl game win.
Yeah, and I think South Carolina is interesting for me because, they finished their last 2 weeks of the season, ending Tennessee's playoff hopes, and then a week later ending Clemson's playoff hopes. So, I don't. It's interesting to me that Spencer Rattler hasn't, put it together yet completely. Like we've seen flashes of really good quarterback play, but if he can finally put it all together, I think South Carolina could be, not like a playoff or championship level team, but I think a solid SEC team. Maybe capable of causing some upsets in that conference. So, they're interesting to me. And then Notre Dame, after their really poor start, they really started getting it going. And they started, beating on teams, left, right, and center. And then, obviously ran into a really good USC team at the end of the season and lost, that game. So, obviously under a first-year head coach, it is difficult, but I think he's going to have taken a lot of positives from this season and learned a lot about not only himself, but his team. And, maybe Notre Dame's, ready to, take the next step, going into next year.
Yeah, and maybe shopping for a new quarterback. I know
quarterback and
I know that
players.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier that our previous episodes, they're maybe just a quarterback away from being a serious team, and I totally agree. Both teams just looking to get some momentum going into the next season, but I think that was the last game we were going to talk about, excluding the college football playoff New Year's 6 games. But you want to update us on how the transfer portal has been looking?
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been hard to kind of keep up with like everything, but we got some new players this week and we got new destinations.
So we're talking, are we just talking players that have entered into the portal for this episode?
So these are new players that have hit the portal and kind of our predictions where we think they're going to go.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about this in our last episode. And then I think in our next episode, we're going to actually update you guys on players that have committed to new spots.
Okay.
So that'll be our episode after this one. But, for this one, we're going to talk about Keyshawn Silver, defensive lineman from North Carolina. He hit the portal earlier, or I guess later last week. And he's an interesting player for me because, he was a 5-star recruit, going into North Carolina. And I think he's going to be, looking for one of those big time teams.
Yeah.
To head to.
So I don't think North Carolina can offer much as far as NIL.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that North Carolina's had a lot of players hit the portal because they obviously do have Drake May.
Yeah.
Who's coming back next year. So you think that'd make a lot of them want to stay, but obviously not. But for Keyshawn Silver, I got him to either Alabama, Georgia, or Michigan.
So just top 3.
Yeah, top 3 teams.
Top 3.
And I think it's because he's a top 3 talent. All 3 of these schools recruited him, out of high school. And I think he's an instant upgrade to any of those 3 teams. Obviously, for Georgia, they are losing, Jalen Carter to the NFL draft. So, that'd be a quick, plug and play guy to, get that defensive line, back up to snuff. And I think Michigan is a team that we've talked about how their defense has surprised us this year and, how talented they've been playing. So, those are kind of my 3 teams for Keyshawn Silver.
Okay.
But next up, we got JT Daniels and
quarterback West Virginia.
And did we talk about the story about him in Oregon State?
I don't think so.
So this is his third time hitting the portal, 4th school. So he went from USC to Georgia, and then let's see, USC to Georgia. Man, I can't even remember his pathway.
Yeah, that's when he's been a lot of places.
Yeah, he's been a lot of places, but it's been 4 teams, I'm pretty sure. But
wow.
Last year when he was in the portal, he was actually interested in going to Oregon State.
He was,
but
Branson took over.
Yeah,
Ben Branson.
But he wanted a house from Oregon State.
He wanted a house?
Yeah, like he wanted them to give him a house for his NIL.
And they just were like, no.
And they're just like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So he went to West Virginia, and I guess that's where he got it.
Did he get a house there?
So,
probably.
So. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
now you think he'll go back to Oregon State?
I don't know. I put that as one of the options because, we talked about how Oregon State is in desperate need of a quarterback.
So maybe they'll give him a house now.
Yeah, maybe they will give him a house. But, he is a West Coast kid. So I think, a return to the West Coast makes a lot of sense for him. So I went with Oregon State, California, and UCLA.
So just 3 teams that need quarterbacks.
3 teams that need quarterbacks, and I think he could be, an upgrade on what they have right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, DTR departing UCLA because he's out of eligibility, and then Cal, team that needs to take that next step or take a step and get a quarterback. So I mean, JT Daniels would be a good fit if he's looking West Coast.
Definitely.
So we got here Romello Brunson,
wide receiver, Miami. And, as of today, there's a lot of Miami players that have hit the portal and have actually gone to SMU, which is interesting.
Huh.
I've seen like 3 former Miami players transfer to SMU.
Whoa,
So,
okay.
looking at my list now, I want to almost throw SMU in there.
Might as well. The whole ship.
Whole ship is going to SMU now. But for this one, I went with Tennessee, USC, and LSU, kind of for similar reasons. High-flying offenses, great quarterback play. With great quarterback play, you're going to need great wide receiver play. So, you can never have enough good wide receivers. I think, USC for me probably makes the most sense because they are losing, Jordan Addison to the draft. So I think they're going to want to find a dynamic receiver that can replace him, as soon as possible. So I think him to USC makes a lot of sense.
And LSU.
Yeah, same thing with LSU. I think, they obviously, we've talked about Keyshawn Boutte coming back, and, I think it's a good fit for him to be on the other side of Keyshawn.
Yeah, and reloading with tons of talent. I'm sure that, he's got his eyes on maybe a school like that who's going to be contenders for sure.
Definitely. So
next, portal update, Denver Harris.
Yeah, talented corner out of Texas A&M. And I think he just became the number 1 transfer portal prospect.
So the number 1 player in the portal.
In the portal right now, yeah. So
I bet his phone's probably ringing out the hook.
Yeah, he's probably got an offer just about everywhere.
Yeah.
So
what'd you cut your list down to?
Yeah, that was the hard part.
Yeah, that was the hard part. It's filtering it down.
I went from 60 teams to about 3.
Yeah.
Pretty difficult, but I went with Texas, Alabama, and Ohio State. I think 3 teams that, can always use good, talented corners. And, I think Denver could have a really instant impact for one of these 3 teams.
Yeah, and he's transferring from Texas A&M. We want to talk a little bit about, our interaction with Texas A&M fans out there on Twitter.
Yeah. So I'm not a very big fan, or I guess
they're not a very
big fan of me in College Station.
Yeah.
I put out a tweet that I thought was really harmless, talking about, it wasn't even player specific. It was just I saw another graphic of a Texas A&M player who had hit the portal, and I kind of quote tweeted it and just said, "Does anyone still play for Texas A&M, or do they have anybody left?" And I think a Texas A&M kind of reporter, a guy who reports on them, he caught wind of the tweet, and he has a pretty good following. I think it's like 60,000 or something like that.
And he responded.
And he made a response to it, which brought loads of Texas A&M fans to our page. And
with all positive feedback.
Yeah, of course. Nothing mean to say at all.
Yeah, they're taking some jabs at, our follower count.
Yeah.
At the moment.
So, I had to diffuse that little situation with those A&M fans. Because I generally did not mean it as a shot. I was curious,
Yeah.
They had seen I think their number was up to 21 or 22 players in the portal. That's a lot of players.
That's a significant number.
So
that was a fair question.
I was just curious, do they have any players left? And they assured me that they do.
They do. Okay.
So that question has been answered. So.
That's good to know. It's hilarious.
In case anyone's curious, Texas A&M still does have players.
They don't got Denver Harris anymore.
No, yeah. He unfortunately has hit the portal.
He has hit the portal along with 24 others. So Jaheim Bell next, tight end from South Carolina.
Tight end from South Carolina. And this is an interesting one for me because, I just learned over the weekend that he was taking a visit to Florida State. this last weekend. So I think he was there on December 9th. So I think that clearly makes, Florida State one of the front runners. Usually when transfer portal players take visits, it's to places that they want to go.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
That makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
that does make sense.
But so I would put Florida State as probably the favorite to land him right now. But I did throw Miami and Tennessee in there. I think two teams that could use, a talented transfer portal tight end. And so, I think both those teams would also make sense, should he end up not going to Florida State. But I'd say Florida State's probably the favorite right now.
And he's from Miami, or he's from the Florida area, right?
I believe so, yes.
So that was your reasoning behind Miami.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, cool. And then we got one more, Alani Cornelius.
Yes.
Is that Ajani?
Ajani, yes.
Ajani, my bad.
Ajani Cornelius, kind of same thing. He took an official visit over the weekend to Oregon. So, I think that probably puts Oregon as a front runner, favorite for that. But I think two other teams that could really use his services is Penn State and Florida. Florida obviously losing a talented offensive guard to the draft. And, Penn State actually keeping their talented offensive tackle who was, projected to be potentially a top 10 pick. He's coming back for another year to Penn State. So I think it makes a lot of sense to slide him in there and create a really, good front five on that offensive line.
Yeah, get some more attention from other schools. I think he's coming from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yes.
Rhode Island. So I think he would get a little bit more attention at Oregon or Penn State or Florida.
Definitely.
Than he was there. So, makes sense he's making the move. But I think that's it for the transfer portal news. I know that next episode we'll be talking about, who has confirmed their destination team.
Mm-hmm.
So something to look out for later this week. But, I think that's going to conclude things for this episode. Another shout out to X-Golf Riverton for letting us storm into their building and, come film these episodes here. It's definitely a huge upgrade, and we're very grateful to be able to use their facilities to, film these episodes in such a beautiful building. This is it's such a cool place. If you guys are from the Salt Lake City, Utah area, you should definitely come check it out. There's a bar, but it's also family friendly. If you want to keep your golf game sharp during the winters, but check it out. I'll put all their links in the description. So that's gonna wrap things up for episode 30. We talked about the best bowl game matchups outside of the New Year's 6 bowl games and the college football playoff games. But, keep an eye out for episode 31 later this week. We'll be talking about specifically the games coming up this weekend. And then, more transfer portal updates, which seems to, consume a lot of our time because of, how many players are jumping in the portal. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely been a grind. But,
yeah,
it's good to keep up with where all these guys are going and kind of impact they could have on their teams. Then maybe next season.
Yeah, so we're we're working our hardest to stay up to date with the portal. But it's going to conclude things here, and we'll see you guys later this week.